Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a review of the ALTRIDER Adventure II foot pegs. ALTRIDER was kind enough to send me a pair of these out to review, so big thank you to them. But I am still going to be honest in my review and show you the installation, comparison, and give my honest feedback. So the pegs I'm comparing are the factory OEM Transalp pegs, the Tusk Billet Race pegs, I do believe they're called, and the Adventure IIs. The reason I've wanted the Adventure IIs is because I'm quite tall, as we've established in my previous video. I'm about like 6'4"-ish, 6'5"-ish, around there, somewhere in between. And so getting on the Transalp, my legs are kind of just in an awkward position. Even with the Tusk pegs, which I threw on there before, with the Adventure IIs, the biggest benefit besides the bigger platform, which is great because I have size 13 US feet, is you can adjust the height and the camber of the foot peg itself. And the camber, what that can do is it can hold your knees closer to the tank, giving you a better grip of the bike. So that's the main reason you would want to have camber on your pegs. And the height adjustability, that is the main reason I'm excited about these, because any extra height I can get, and I know there's some tall riders who have contacted me about like my suggestions for the Transalp specifically. We're gonna see how these work, but I'm betting it's gonna be a lot better than factory. Any extra room I can get with my legs, it's gonna be huge. You guys know that. You guys know that, how like awkward it can feel being all cramped up on there. You get it, you get it. Yeah, so let's get to the unboxing. I've already opened these, so presentation might not be perfect, but let's show you what you're getting. I just wanna mention, the packaging on these is like fantastic. They know, they're well aware of how good their packaging is. It says, "We hope you notice our attention to detail." I noticed, ALTRIDER, I noticed. I'm gonna pull this foam piece out and move this away because that has my address on it. So in the box, you're gonna have the two foot pegs, the studs that thread into them, some Loctite, and you're gonna have the hardware, which can adjust height, camber, and mount it to the bike itself. All right, let's talk about the tools required to do this job. Very simple. I'm gonna use needle nose pliers. That is to get the cotter pin out for the original foot peg you have in. You can also use a screwdriver to help you pry out that cotter pin. It just helps you maneuver it around. For the foot pegs themselves, you're gonna need a 5mm Allen key or socket. I'm using a socket. I'm gonna be using an E6 bit, which looks just like that, to install the cleats to the pegs. And you can use either a screwdriver or you could be like me and use a drill because I don't have time for a screwdriver. Also, we are going to be using Loctite. Make sure you put a little drop of Loctite on every single cleat before you drill it in or screw it in, and then you'll be good. ALTRIDER also sells the Adventure II peg for a couple different models of adventure bikes. So it's not just the Transalp. This process will be similar for multiple different bikes. But make sure you read the instruction manual because I've noticed there is a few differences from bike to bike. All right, so I'm just gonna take one cleat at a time, slightly thread it in until you've done the entire peg. So I've got all of these hand threaded in. It is very important that you thread them in by hand. Don't just go straight to a drill and do that, because if you get one of these cross threaded and you can't get it out, then you have all of your other cleats level and then you have one just sticking up, and I can't imagine that'd be too comfortable. I'd also like to mention that ALTRIDER has included 4 additional spare cleats in case you lose any or need to replace one. All right, so the Loctite provided by ALTRIDER. So I'm just twisting it off, and you only want to use a very small amount. I always accidentally do too much. Just a very small drop on each of these little cleats. You want to be able to eventually remove them if you need to. Let it soak into the threads. If you do too much, be sure to wipe it up. You might have to do that either way. A little goes a long way with these. All right, now that I've got some Loctite on each one of these, I'm going to take my drill and go through each one of these. Just snug them down. So it's probably not wise to use a fresh microfiber. I was polishing aluminum with this one on the other side. I don't think it'll make too much of a difference, but yeah, don't reuse your microfibers with Loctite on them. Just go through and wipe around any of the excess Loctite, make sure you get it off. Now, one thing about these cleats that I'd like to mention, and I'll try my best to show a demonstration of my boot later, if I can get all the mud off of it. These cleats are supposed to be less damaging to your boots than others on the market. Like I know with my Tusk pegs, I have brand new Tech 7s. They're like less than 2 months old. You can very much see where the cleats have dug into those. That should be a benefit, but you don't need cleats if you're gonna be riding on the street only. You can just run the peg itself, but I highly recommend installing the cleats. It's well worth it for me at least to have the extra grip, which I clearly don't have in my hands at least. I want to give you a quick side-by-side comparison of the factory peg, the Tusk peg, and the ALTRIDER peg. And let me just tell you, the difference between these even shocked me. I had no idea how big of a difference it was going to be size-wise between all three of these. Here is the factory peg with the rubber piece removed. I have one with the rubber piece for comparison. Here is the Tusk peg. Let's put it right next to that for size comparison. You can see that, and this one has grits on it, so let's set that right there. Are you ready? Here is the ALTRIDER peg right next to it, and what a difference that is. Between all three of these, the Tusk peg, I thought that was a huge peg, like comparatively, because here's the factory one, and then here's the factory, let me put it right side by side. Here's the factory peg versus the ALTRIDER. The ALTRIDER is almost double the size. That's just wild to me, how big of a difference it is. Here's with the rubber, which is what it'll look like factory. So this is the width of the factory with the rubber, and then the ALTRIDER peg. Here's the Tusk peg versus the ALTRIDER peg, side by side, literal side by side comparison. And here is the factory peg without the rubber in it. Now, for the size it is, the ALTRIDER peg is surprisingly light. I'd say it's only slightly heavier than the Tusk Billet peg, and it definitely offers a lot bigger platform. So I'd say the weight is definitely worth it, and it really isn't much. These feel, honestly, about the same. This one's slightly more, but this one also gives you grip in the center, which this does not provide. That's awesome. I'm gonna love this. I can already tell. So I can honestly say that from the factory, either of these would be a huge upgrade from the factory, which is super flimsy, has really no bite, and it's not going to be good for off-roading at all. And I have to off-road every single day, so trust me on this one, I know. But especially between these two, I can immediately tell you what I'm picking. With the size of my feet, my foot is wider than that by a decent amount. So that wouldn't cover all of my foot. This would give me a much, much greater platform to put my foot on and to maneuver myself and get just genuinely better ergonomics. So if I had to pick already, I'm picking this one. Plus you can adjust the camber and the height of it. So if you're a tall rider, I'm telling you, you're gonna wanna go with this one. Like, this is definitely an improvement for factory because it's the budget option, really, for how cheap these are, but I gotta tell you, I'm excited about this one. Let's get started with setting the camber on the pegs. Over here, it's gonna come with 2 thumb screws that are a 5mm Allen. Yep, 5mm Allen. And so what you're gonna do, this is how you set your camber. Using no washers is completely flat, 0 camber. They provide you with multiple washers to set your camber. So this is the thicker washer, which is 1mm thick. And here is the thinner washer, which is 0.5 millimeter thick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my thumb screw, put on one of the thicker washers, because I'm trying to have a little bit of camber here. So I'm gonna use 1 thick washer and 1 thin washer, and I can play around with it later on, see what I like. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get it started just a little bit and do like I did before and add a tiny little bit of Loctite to it. Just a small little drop will do it. There we go. So I'm gonna take that, and then I'm with my wrench. I'm just gonna crank it down. If there is Torx specs, I'll get them. I'm gonna tighten this up, just snug it up a good bit. Not too heavy, not insanely tight to where you strip anything, but that'll give us a tiny bit of camber right there. And then repeat with the other side. Make sure it's the same amount of camber. Make sure you get any of this Loctite up. But you can play around with that and see what you like, because it'll place your foot in a different position. The reason they give you multiple of these tiny little washers and the thick washers is so you can perfectly fine tune the positioning to how much camber you want. So I'm just experimenting now and seeing what I'm gonna like. So we'll try with that. Okay, so removing the old foot peg, what we're gonna wanna do is there's a cotter pin in here and a washer right under here. And so you're gonna wanna retain both. Try and catch like a corner and see if you can bend it up straight. And if you use needle nose pliers, you can squeeze it with the needle nose pliers. And that'll help you pull it out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm trying to spin this around. I realize you can't see, but I'm trying to get a grip on it from behind. So save that washer and the cotter pin and pull out this pin in between. If you can't get it, you might have to like push it. You can try using that. Just get a good grip on it and pull it out. And you're ready to move over to your next foot peg. All right, so I went ahead and installed the rider's right side foot peg just to make sure I could have everything down. And I think I've got it. So this is the left peg. So you're gonna take this long spacer right here, stick it right through there. This is for installing on the low position. So the foot peg would be about 1/2 inch lower. And so you're gonna take this wedge right here, put it right over that. That way, as you can see, the wedge is hitting on this flat part with the camber bolt. Take the gold spring for the left side if you're doing the high position. There's a little hole right here. Stick the straight end of the gold spring through that and over the little spacer like that. So it should come out right in the middle of this wedge. Then you take your short spacer, put it right on top, and then you're ready to go to the bike. And so what you're gonna wanna do, so you stick this right through there, see if you can squeeze it in, and then take your pen. You're gonna have to compress that spring a little bit. It might be a little difficult. Take this pen, kind of wiggle it around until it's in. So it should look just like that. So you're gonna take your washer, put it here, and I'm gonna have to reuse my old cotter pin. I'll change it later, but the one provided was just slightly too big. So let me see if I can get this spun around. So I'm gonna stick it back through. There's a little hole, it goes through both sides. Stick it all the way through. So you wanna bend these around, and that's what holds everything in place. And then you can take that, flatten it out, make sure it's fully wrapped around. All right, and then you're done. That's fully installed in the low position where the spring is on top. So let's give it a try. So I forgot to mention, if you are putting your peg in a lower position, chances are your foot peg is going to be slightly different placement from where you want it to be. Mine looks slightly different because I have an aftermarket one. All you have to do to adjust the shifter height is you loosen these two nuts that retain this rod in place, and you spin this rod and that'll lift it back and forward. Now, to adjust your brake pedal, what you have to do is there's a retainer screw, which is this bottom nut, and then you lift this up, this little rubber shielding, and you see that tiny little nut right there? You twist that, and twisting it so it goes upward is lifting this pedal higher. Twisting it downward is so it's lower. And I have mine in the lowest position already. So that should have you set up. All right, that's a Corvette. Had to flex a little bit. So here is a full view of the bike with these new pegs. I think it honestly looks really good. So I've put about an hour on these pegs, and what I've noticed so far is that off-road, they are like an amazing improvement, for me at least, because it gives me more maneuverability with my feet. I can tilt my toes in more, which is better for turning off-road. It just gives me a much bigger and better platform. Off-road, huge improvement, but I've noticed, and it's due to the camber that I've added, that because my feet are somewhat more tilted inward, I was experiencing a little bit of discomfort in my foot. So what I think I'm gonna do is go back and take out the 0.5 millimeter spacer, and I think that's gonna be just perfect. It wasn't bad at all, and actually I did get used to it, but I think just being in that different position, it had my foot a little bit twisted to where it was just slightly uncomfortable. I'm actually getting used to it, so I don't think it's that bad, but the camber did give me a much better grip on the tank, because it just kind of makes your legs like inclined to grab the tank, which I thought was really good. Also, the height has the added benefit of lowering your center of gravity, which is very helpful off-road especially. So it lowers your center of gravity and gives you better control of the bike. So yeah, I honestly am very happy with these. I think they look a lot better than the silver ones I had on there. So I want to give a big thank you to ALTRIDER for sending these out to review. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more Transalp content. I'll be coming with more soon. I hope this helped. Have a good day, y'all.